My cousin laughed at my job, and I let the room laugh with her. I didn't plan to start the reunion with a lie, but silence is its own kind of lie. I stood there in the rented lodge, hands around a flimsy paper cup of lemonade, while the cousins took turns boasting. Promotions, ringed fingers, new houses with white fences. My name is Clara Voss, and for the past 2 years I've worked a string of contracts that don't fit neatly on a cake. Operations consultant, fixer, the person who walks into a mess and finds the floor again. It isn't flashy. It pays the rent. It gave me a quiet life. Savannah, my closest in age cousin, has a voice that sails across rooms. She called me over, all warmth, then clipped the warmth with a smile that showed each perfect tooth. Clara does remote stuff, she said, waving her hand like she could shoo it from the air. You know, little gigs. She's a professional Zoom. The table laughed. I felt my ears warm, then felt the heat settle into my chest like a stone in water. There are laughs that ring out and vanish. There are laughs that stay. I sipped the lemonade. It was too sweet. Too young for my mouth. I looked out the window at the lawn sloping to the lake. Kids shrieked on the dock. Aunt Helen stacked paper plates into trembling towers. On the mantel, old pictures leaned in wood frames. In one, I was 5, face smeared with frosting, eyes set on a balloon. In another, Savannah and I had matching braids, our heads pressed together like we weren't destined to pull apart. My mother reached for my wrist the way she does when she can't bear the pause. They don't mean it, she whispered. She always says that, and it always means they do. I smiled because it was easier than explaining anything. Easier than saying how many late nights I've sat with spreadsheets and tired owners and payrolls that begged to be saved. How many times I've answered phones no one else wanted to answer. How the word little can turn honest work into an apology. Savannah kept going, friendly knife after friendly knife. She talked about her agency, her new clients, her real office. She said the last part looking at me, as if our eyes could meet in the place where her voice landed. I nodded, the way you nod during dental work. It will be over soon. It always is. Over by the dessert table, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A short vibration, then another. I ignored it. The closing was scheduled for today, but closings slip. They slip the way the lake slips under cloud. I had told the attorney not to call until the ink was permanent. I had told myself not to hope. Savannah's husband lifted a plastic cup and announced a toast. To the agency, he said, grinning, and to promotions that don't happen on Zoom. Laughter again, easy and cheap. I held my cup at chest level and didn't drink. The phone buzzed a third time, patient, insistent. I let the laughter finish. I set my cup down. I stepped away. I walked out to the screened porch where the lake made a sound like breath. My phone glowed in my palm, a simple subject line opening like a small, steady door. Closing confirmation, completed. I stared at the words until my heartbeat slowed, until the stone of heat in my chest turned into something else. I looked back through the screen at my family, all of them suspended mid-story, mid-gesture, mid-summer. I hadn't lied. Not yet. I had only kept a truth warm, waiting for its own good moment to arrive. And it had, quietly, right on time. All families have scripts. Ours was written in a language that made success sound like applause and worry sound like gossip. Savannah was our lead actress from the first school play. She collected trophies like shells. She saw herself in reflective surfaces and liked what she saw. I learned to prefer corners, the safety of angles, the privacy of small tasks done well. At dinner we sat at 2 long tables, adults at one, kids at the other, with a lane of salad bowls and hamburger buns between. The talk rose and fell. Stories about colleges, baby names, mortgage rates. I posted up beside my mother and tried to make room for her elbow. She never eats enough at these things, as if taking the last roll came with a fee. So, Clara, Uncle Tom asked, friendly, oblivious, what is it you do all day? I solve problems, I said. Mostly operations headaches. Processes, staffing, supplier issues. So, like, freelancer, he said, trying to be helpful. The word hung in the air like a limp balloon. Savannah leaned in. She's great at LinkedIn, she chirped. You should see her posts. Motivational stuff. Hustle culture. I don't post on LinkedIn. I read it like a weather report. I felt the edges of my patience and held them. I help small companies stay alive, I said. I like seeing paychecks go out. It's practical. Savannah tilted her head. You should come see our office sometime, she said. Real desks, real clients. We just signed Graybridge Apparel. They're massive. 11 retail locations, 2 distribution centers, a full e-commerce turn. It's serious. We're scaling, so, different world from, Zoom land. She smiled like she was offering me a tour of a city I couldn't afford. Graybridge. The name slid across the surface of my mind and vanished. I nodded. Congratulations, I said. I meant it, and I didn't. Both things can be true. The room softened into night. String lights blinked across the porch. Fireflies stitched bright dashes over the lawn. In the kitchen, Aunt Helen laid out pies like trophies. Savannah gathered a little audience near the sink to talk about growth and hiring and how hard it is to find good people. I stood at the edge and watched her hands move in quick little arcs, watched everyone nod on cue. Clara, she called out suddenly, pulling me closer by name. Tell them what your rate is. I'm curious. 4. Process stuff. I thought of the hours I'd spent reading debt schedules, calming panicked owners, reworking shift maps so parents could pick up their kids. I thought of the call I would take tomorrow morning about a factory line that had been down for 7 hours because a feeder valve was sticking. I wanted to give her a number and let her laugh and be done with it. I usually scope by outcome, not hourly, I said. Price follows the problem. Savannah laughed. So mysterious, she said. Maybe one day you'll hire me to do your branding. When you're ready for the big leagues. Something in me stepped to the side and watched the scene from a little distance. Same kitchen, same voices, same script. And yet, the email sat in my phone like a match I had not yet struck. I felt both large and small at once, like I had one foot in the doorway of my old life and one against the frame of a door I had just pushed open. My mother touched my sleeve. Take a walk, she whispered. You look pale. I'm fine, I said. I just need air. I slipped through the screen door again. The lake smelled like warm metal. Frogs called from the cattails in patient rhythm. Under the hum of the night, the other hum inside me settled into a line. The purchase wasn't just paperwork. It was a map that redrew itself in my pocket. From the porch, laughter rolled out again, stretched thin by the screen. I watched our reflections in the glass, a family haloed by string lights, bent over pie. Someone asked Savannah to say a few words about the agency's bright future. She cleared her throat, lifted her fork like a baton, and began. I felt the flint of the email in my hand, and for once, I didn't swallow it. I let it spark. I let it glow in the small, secret place where the next set of words began forming, patient and clean. The truth didn't arrive as a lightning strike. It arrived as a stack of PDFs, a polite voicemail, a wire confirmation, a signature loop that closed as neatly as a door settling into its frame. But the discovery wasn't the paperwork. It was something older, a thread I finally tugged free. 3 months earlier, I'd gotten a call from a banker I trust who deals in small debt the big people forget about. He knew I liked companies that felt like kitchens at closing time, messy but fixable. Graybridge Apparel's logistics contractor is underwater, he'd said. Good people. Bad lease. The owner's tired and wants out. The bank wants the debt off the books. It's clean. It could be yours. The contractor wasn't glamorous. A regional distribution firm with 2 warehouses, 28 employees, and trucks that needed new brakes. But their bones were good. They fed families. They kept holiday orders from dying on loading docks. I walked the floors under buzzing fluorescents and watched the pickers move like quiet metronomes, every scan a heartbeat. The owner's hands shook when he explained the debt. He had mortgaged his house twice and still smiled when he gave the tour. I built a small circle around me, people who didn't need to be convinced to be decent. We ran numbers until the numbers felt like facts. We asked the hardest questions first, then the scary ones, then the human ones. We negotiated, not like pirates, but like neighbors who intended to live on the street long after the deal closed. I promised the owner we'd keep the staff. I promised his wife she could sleep. Savannah never knew any of this. She never asked what my days looked like past the word Zoom. She didn't know that the logistics firm she never noticed was the set of hands under the table holding up her latest client's champagne toast. She didn't know that Graybridge's winter line would sit in the dark without this firm's quiet, daily choreography. At noon today, while I was slicing tomatoes for the reunion burgers, my attorney texted, DocuSign live in 5. I wiped my hands, signed on the porch step, and sent the last packet through. Then I put my phone face down on the picnic table and refilled the ketchup bottle. Maybe I didn't want the universe to see me being greedy for good news. Maybe I was still the girl who'd learned to shrink. The second ping came at 3:30. Funding confirmed. The third was the email on the porch. Closing completed. A fourth followed, smaller but sharper, welcome, owner. It came from the company's timekeeping software, as if the machines themselves were curtsying. I opened the file my attorney sent. It wasn't dramatic. It was a letter to employees, drafted for my signature. It was simple. I read it twice and felt my chest steady. The word said, "We are here to make sure your work keeps mattering." Inside, the speeches about Savannah's agency swelled. Someone clinked a knife against a glass. Words like innovative and disruptive and exponential drifted across the porch, pretty and light. I was happy for her, or at least I was trying to be. But I saw the whole system like a diagram. The circle of needs, the way glamour takes what grit delivers, the way one cousin holds the microphone while another cousin holds a barcode scanner and a lunchbox. I signed the employee letter on my phone with a fingertip and pictured it printing in a quiet office, the paper curling as it cooled. Then I heard Savannah say Graybridge again, the syllables crisp like she was biting a green apple. I imagined her campaign deck looking perfect on a conference room screen. I imagined her team brainstorming taglines for a brand that would miss Christmas if our forklift didn't start on the first try. There are moments when the story tilts, and you can feel it tilt under your shoes. I felt one now. I wasn't interested in humiliating anyone. I wasn't 12. But I was done swallowing air when I was hungry. The porch screen swung inward on its tired spring as I stepped back into the kitchen. I wiped a smear of ketchup from my wrist. I slid my phone into my back pocket like a small, loaded truth. It was time to speak plainly. I didn't stage anything. I didn't clear my throat. I waited for a quiet seam in the noise and stepped into it. Savannah, I said, and my voice surprised me in how steady it was. Can I show you something? She smiled the way people smile when they expect flattery. If it's a LinkedIn post, spare me, she said, playful, used to the room bending toward her. A few cousins laughed. I didn't. It's a letter, I said. From a company. I'd like to read it to you. The kitchen sheriffed itself into attention. Even noise can sense when a new kind begins. Savannah tipped her head, performative patience. Go ahead, she said. We love a reading. I opened the file and read the letter meant for the employees, not for her. It thanked them for what they'd built when no one was watching. It said their jobs were safe. It said the new owner respected the old owner's hands. It said nothing about glory. When I finished, the room had that stillness rooms get when they realize something has entered that wasn't here before. That's sweet, Savannah said too brightly. Which company is it? One of your little clients. Graybridge Logistics, I said, and watched her face do the math without showing the numbers. We'll be handling Graybridge Apparel's distribution for as long as we keep earning it. Aunt Helen put down a knife and didn't know where her hands should go. My mother pressed her lips together and stared at the tablecloth. Savannah's husband looked at his shoes, which had become very interesting. Savannah recovered quickly, as she always does. Oh, she said, light as a paper lantern. Well. Congrats on your purchase. That's very industrious. Our agency is Graybridge's creative partner, so, wow, small world. It is, I said. And I meant what I read. We'll do our part. On time, accurately, with a human voice on the phone. If your client's boxes arrive, someone's hands made that happen. She crossed her arms. Her smile thinned. Is there a point to this, Clara? Or are we doing your quiet, poetic thing again? There is, I said. You've been telling a story about my work that isn't true. You call it Zoom land. You call it little gigs. You make other people laugh to keep yourself shiny. I don't need you to like what I do. But I need you to stop making small what you don't understand. Her eyes flickered. She glanced around to see who was watching. Everyone was, the way you watch a glass slide toward the edge of a counter. Don't be dramatic, she said. We're family. It's a joke. It's not, I said. So here's my boundary. We're going to sit down this week with Graybridge, Logistics, and Creative together, and align on realistic timelines. We'll talk surge capacity and blackout windows and what happens when a snowstorm traps 3 pallets outside Omaha. If you want the campaign on Tuesday, don't schedule the influencer drop on Sunday night if the warehouse is closed. Your brilliance deserves a path that exists. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to make sure we don't embarrass the jobs on the other end of this. She stared at me, and for the first time all night I watched her run out of script. She opened her mouth, closed it, found a new stage. So you bought, what, a trucking company? You play CEO now. Is that the big reveal? I thought of the owner's trembling hands, the forklift that needed a coil, the girl who took her lunch in her car because the break room was too loud. I'm not playing anything, I said. I'm responsible for it. Which means when you toast promotions that don't happen on Zoom, you're toasting people who keep your promotions from happening at all. I felt the edge of anger, and stepped back from it. One more thing, I said, quieter. You don't have to respect me. But you will stop doing it in front of my mother. Savannah went pale, then pink, then set her jaw. Fine, she said, with the sharpness of a slammed drawer. Congrats on your warehouse. We'll circle back. I nodded. We will, I said. And you'll have my cell when Graybridge asks for the moon. I'll be the person explaining gravity in a way that keeps everyone paid. The room exhaled. Someone dropped a fork. Uncle Tom asked if anyone wanted more pie, which was mercy. I put my phone away. I took my mother's plate and filled it with slices she'd pretend to refuse. The string lights hummed their indifferent song. Outside, the lake kept breathing. And then Savannah touched my elbow. Just a brush. "Clara," she said in a voice I'd never heard her use with me, a voice with the smallest shake. "Can we talk?" "Not here." I nodded. We stepped onto the porch, where the night felt large and close and old enough to hold us. She stared at the screen as if it were a curtain. "Did you do this to prove something?" she asked, not looking at me. "To me?" I shook my head. "I did it because I could fix it," I said. "You were just the echo that helped me hear my own voice." She didn't answer. She pressed her palm against the screen until the mesh printed on her skin, a pattern she could carry back inside. The morning after the reunion, I drove to the warehouse with 2 boxes of donuts and a letterhead I'd never owned before. The building looked the same, beige and brave. The line managers met me in a small office that smelled like dust and printer ink. We stood in a circle that wasn't quite a circle and read what I'd signed. No speeches. No balloons. Just a new start dressed like a workday. I walked the floor until I could feel the rhythm under my feet. I asked people their names twice to make sure they stuck. I watched a young woman relabel a mispicked carton with a patience that felt like prayer. When we took our break by the roll-up door, I looked out at the loading dock and felt the wind move through, clean and ordinary. The forklifts beeped in a tempo that sounded like a heartbeat learning a new pace. In the afternoon, I met Graybridge Apparel's operations lead on a video call. He looked tired and grateful, the way people look when someone finally reads the manual. We discussed peak season planning and labor floats and the poetry of on time. He didn't care what I called myself. He cared that his boxes would arrive alive. 2 days later, Savannah texted me. It was short. "Can we coordinate calendars with Graybridge? We'll adjust the rollout for your blackout windows. Thanks." No heart emoji. No quip. Just the work, acknowledging the other work. We sent each other availability like people building a bridge from both sides. It wasn't love. It was respect wearing a borrowed coat. At night, when the warehouse lights shut off and the day softened, I thought about the reunion, about the way the room tilted when I read the letter. I wasn't sorry for the reveal. I was sorry it had to be a reveal at all. I kept thinking about the girl I used to be, the one who thought being quiet was the same as being harmless. The lake would keep breathing whether or not we named it. But sometimes you have to name things to stop other names from settling on them like dust. My mother called and told me Aunt Helen said the pie turnout was the best in years. She also told me that Savannah had dropped off 3 bags of groceries at her house, just because. My mother cried a little, which she does when kindness shows up dressed like errands. "I'm proud of you," she said, the words hesitant as if they might break and then stronger when they didn't. "Not for buying a company. For not letting them tell you who you are." I drove to the lake one evening after a long day of inventory audits. The lodge was empty, its screen door yawning in the breeze. I stood on the dock and watched the water think about rain. I remembered the toast, the laughter, the way I'd held a paper cup like it was a shield. Then I remembered a different feeling, the one that arrived with the email, the one that tasted like a small room inside me filling with light. Quiet revenge. That's what someone might call it from the outside. But to me, it felt more like alignment. Not the triumph of a clapback, but the discipline of building something truer than a joke. I didn't flip a table. I bought a set of them and made sure they wouldn't wobble. I didn't embarrass anyone. I named the work, and in naming it, I gave it enough space to breathe. A week later, Savannah and I sat across from each other in a conference room at Graybridge. We walked through calendars and contingencies. When the conversation drifted toward impossible promises, she surprised me by tapping the brakes. Let's check with logistics, she said, and looked at me without irony. It was a small sentence, but it rewrote a larger script. We didn't leave as friends. We left as professionals who had to make something real together. On the sidewalk, she paused. I shouldn't have said what I said, she murmured. About Zoom. Her gaze didn't meet mine, but it didn't need to. I heard what mattered. Noted, I replied softly. Thank you. That night, I wrote a new kind of post, not for LinkedIn, just for myself, in a notebook that never asked me to perform. I wrote about hands and boxes and time. I wrote that work is not small because no one sees it. I wrote that families can be better when someone refuses to be less. I wrote that I wanted to be that someone for the next person who needed it. When I closed the notebook, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not victory. Not even relief. Peace, steady and usable, like a good table under your forearms. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.